Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to install a backup camera on a 2004 Toyota Sequoia. The process is the same for any first generation Toyota Sequoia. This includes the model years from 2001 through 2007. If you're new to the channel, welcome again, and do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below if you'd like to watch more of my automotive DIY content. If you're already a subscriber, I'd like to take this moment to thank you for your support. It really means a lot to me. So let's get right into it. In the previous video where we installed the double DIN unit, we connected the backup camera video feed cable into the back of the unit, routed this wire through the dash, and now we need to take this wire and route it all the way back to the tailgate so we can connect it to the backup camera which will be mounted on the license plate. At the back of the car, we need to make three connections. First is this connector which plugs into the backup camera lens, and second are these two cables, the black and the red. The black wire needs to be grounded, and the red wire needs to be connected to a supply which provides 12 volts whenever the car is put in reverse, and therefore the backup camera needs to be activated. On most cars, the perfect candidate for this are the reverse lights at the back of the car. This is because whenever the car is put in reverse, these lights come on and provide 12 volts, which can be used for the backup camera wire. However, with this particular car, this is where we hit a snag. As you can see on the tailgate, there is no reverse light, and therefore nowhere to tap into that provides 12 volts whenever the car is put in reverse. To solve this problem, here is what we're gonna do. First, we will route the backup camera wire, both the connector for the camera and the power and the ground cables, all the way back to the tailgate. Here, this cable will be connected to the connector coming from the backup camera lens, which will be mounted behind the license plate. Next, we need to route these two wires, the black and the red, all the way from the tailgate back into the center console inside the car. Here we're going to use a switch to control power to the backup camera and therefore turn it on and off manually. The best area to install the switch is in this region, as it is very easy to access from the driver's seat. My car did not come with heated seats originally, so we're going to be installing a heated seat switch and use that to control the backup camera. Now that we have a clear understanding of what we need to do, let's get started with the install. The first step is to route the wires all the way from the dash to the tailgate. To do that, we need to remove these two plastic door sills. They're held in by a number of Phillips screws. Remove the screws and then pull upwards to remove the trim piece. We're going to place the wires in the space we just created by removing the trim pieces so that the wires are hidden and the install is nice and clean. Route the wire from the dash under the carpet and into the door sill area as shown. Snake the wires under the B-pillar and then pull them out in the rear seat area. At the very back of the car in the hatch area, remove this plastic trim piece. As you can see, there is quite a bit of space between the carpet and the plastic trim on the side. Snake the wire under and pull it out as shown. Next, we need to start routing the wire upwards so we can get to the headliner. You'll need to loosen these two trim pieces using a plastic pry tool. This will give you enough space to put your hand in and pull the wire through. Avoid using metal tools to do this, as you can scratch the trim piece. You might also need to pull back the rubber weather stripping on the hatch as shown so you can get the wire through. After you pull the wire through, rest it in this channel behind the plastic trim and then pull it out from the top like this. Next, you need to make extensions using butt connectors to these two wires. Make sure the wires you add are nice and long, as we need to pull these all the way to the center console. The wire routing will be the exact reverse of how we did it before. Through the hatch plastic trim, into the door sills, and finally ending up in the passenger seat area. I'll be showing you how to actually pull the wire into the center console area later on in the video when we install the switch for the backup camera. The first phase of routing is complete. Don't forget to reinstall this plastic trim piece and push the rubber weather stripping back in. We can also reinstall these two plastic door sills we removed earlier. While reinstalling the trim pieces, make sure that the plastic clips for the trim piece don't cut up the wire that we just routed through here. Next, we'll need to remove these three plastic trim pieces on the hatch. You just have to pry upwards using your hands. They come off fairly easily. Next, we need to remove this grab strap so we can remove the bigger trim piece. Pry the cover off by pushing it backwards as shown, and then remove the 10mm bolt holding the strap to the hatch. The trim piece is held in by a number of plastic clips. Pry downwards on one corner and this should give you enough space to pry the trim piece off. Next, we need to remove this metal plate which covers the inside of the hatch. It is held in by a number of 10mm bolts. After you remove the bolts, remove these 3 electrical connectors by pushing down on the tab and pulling them out. Finally, there are 3 plastic clips holding the metal plate in. Use a plastic pry tool to pry them off and then you can remove the plate. The next step is to connect this connector from the backup camera to the connector inside the cabin. To do that, we'll need to drill a small hole in the plastic trim surrounding the license plate. The best area to drill through is this region over here. This will ensure that the backup camera cable is well hidden away and not too visible from outside. If you look into the hatch from inside, you'll notice that this area is plastic and the surrounding area is metal. We need to make sure that we drill into this area, otherwise we will have to drill through 2 surfaces, metal and plastic. From the outside, it's a little hard to tell which area you're drilling into. Therefore, it makes sense to start the hole from inside using a small drill bit. Since the trim piece we're drilling through is plastic, it is very easy to make the hole even by hand as shown. After the hole is made, you can start drilling from the outside using an electric drill. Increase the size of the drill bit you're using progressively until the connector fits through the hole. You can install a rubber grommet around the wire before you push it in so that the sharp edge of the hole does not cut the wire insulation up. Push the rest of the wire into the hatch and also install the rubber grommet in the hole. It should look like this in the end. Next, we're going to mount our backup camera to the license plate. You'll need to remove your license plate, align the holes of the backup camera with the license plate holes and then reinstall them both together as shown. Now that the camera is mounted, we can start wiring the connector through the hatch and into the headliner area. One important thing to note is that the Sequoia has a sliding rear window. This means that when we route the wire through the hatch, we have to do this in such a way so that the wire does not get caught on the sliding rear window as it goes up and down. The best way to do this is by following the path of the existing wires in the hatch. We're going to be following this cable as it goes behind the sliding window, exits through the tailgate, and enters the headliner area where the other end of our connector is. To make sure that the wire stays as close as possible to the black cable, we'll be using zip ties. As you can see, I've spaced out the zip ties so that the wire is very closely attached to the black cable and there is no slack in it. Here is how the wire looks after we have routed it all the way through the tailgate and it is ready to exit. Don't forget to cut the ends of the zip ties off. We will need to drill another small hole in this area so that the wire can come out and join this cable on the way to the headliner. Before we proceed, we're going to slowly lower the sliding window and see if the wire catches on it. Remember that to do this, you'll need to reconnect these 3 electrical connectors. You'll just have to leave the black metal plate dangling, as if you install it, you can't watch the window going down. A quick warning, when you reconnect the connectors, your alarm will go off and it is pretty loud. To prevent this from happening, I suggest you leave your key in the on position when you reconnect the connectors. As you can see, our routing is perfect and we can proceed. Here is the approximate location of the hole that you need to drill so you can get the connector through. Just like before, progressively increase the size of the drill bit until the connector fits. This time we're drilling through metal and not plastic, and therefore we have a bare metal surface that needs to be covered up to prevent corrosion. Before you paint, make sure to properly clean the surface using isopropyl alcohol and a cloth so you get all the contaminants off and the paint adheres well. Touch-up paint works perfectly for this as it is a pretty small area to cover. Apply a few light coats and space the coats out by 30 minutes or so. Once you're done, let the paint sit for a while so that it cures and hardens properly. I would suggest waiting for a whole day for best results. Once the paint is ready, we can pull the wire through. Remember to install a rubber grommet just like last time so that the sharp edge of the hole doesn't cut up the wire insulation. As you can see, to get this wire all the way to the headliner, we need an extension cable. You can find the part number for the same in the video description below. Connect one end of the extension cable to the connector in the headliner, and then hide the excess extension cable wire in the headliner trim piece as shown. Just like before, we will use zip ties to connect this wire to the cabling on the tailgate. Follow the cabling and attach the wire to it as shown. Until you get to the connector coming out of the hole we made in the tailgate. Attach the two ends of the connector together, and don't forget to cut the ends of the zip ties off after you tighten them down. You can also go ahead and button up this headliner trim piece. Reinstall the metal plate on the hatch by tapping in the 3 plastic clips first, and connect the 3 electrical connectors. Install the various 10mm bolts holding the plate to the tailgate. Now you can install the plastic trim piece that goes over the metal plate. Place the trim piece on the window edge and then give it a few taps in the direction away from the hatch as shown. Tap the trim piece all around so that the clips go into place. Finally, you just have to install these 3 trim pieces around the window by tapping them into place again. The final thing to do at the hatch is to seal off the hole we made in the plastic trim piece around the license plate so that no water can get in. For this, I'll be using Loctite clear silicone sealant. Carefully dab a little bit of sealant around the wire so that all the space is filled up. Remember that this takes 48 hours to cure, so after you apply it, do not touch the wire as this may shift the sealant and break the seal. This completes the second phase of our installation and we can move on to the final one, installing a switch to turn the backup camera on and off. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'll be using a heated seat switch to do this. Here is a circuit diagram explaining how we're going to install this switch and how it's going to control the backup camera. Basically, the switch is going to be controlling a relay, which when turned on will switch 12 volts of power to the backup camera and turn it on. The switch we're using has 2 different positions, one for the low setting, which is a red and blue wire, and the other for the high setting, which is a light green wire. The blue wire is the power wire and needs 12 volts from the car battery. Instead of routing a cable directly from the battery and into the cabin, we'll be tapping into the fuse block to get this power signal. When you turn the switch to any one of the 2 positions high or low, that particular position's wire makes electrical contact with the blue wire and therefore gets 12 volts. I want either of the positions of the switch to turn the backup camera on, so I'm just going to short the 2 low and high wires together. These 2 wires are connected to the coil of the relay, which is grounded on the other side. Therefore, whenever you turn the switch on to either of the positions, a potential difference of 12 volts is applied across the coil. The relay is now set to be in the energized state. As you can see, we're also providing 12 volts to pin 30 of the relay. In the energized state, pin number 30 makes electrical contact with pin 87, which is the output pin. This pin is connected to the red wire, which is the power wire for the backup camera, and therefore we have 12 volts and the backup camera turns on. When the heated seat switch is turned to the off position, the low and the high wires no longer make electrical contact with the blue wire. The coil of the relay does not have 12 volts across it anymore and therefore it is de-energized. The backup camera wire no longer has power supplied to it and it will turn off. Understanding how a relay works is very useful, not just for backup cameras but also for other devices like fog lights and light bars, as they are wired in a very similar manner. To start installing the switch, we'll need to remove the center console trim. Use a plastic pry tool to remove this plastic tray as shown. Now all you have to do is open up the center console storage box and pull upwards on the trim to remove it. Don't forget to pull out the electrical connector for the side mirrors. Use the plastic pry tool to remove the storage cubby. This will be helpful to route the wire from the fuse box into the center console. The next step is to tap into the fuse box so we can provide a 12 volts power source for the backup camera. It's very important that you choose the right type of circuit to tap into. The circuit that we want to use to provide power for the backup camera is called an ignition switch circuit. This is a circuit that has no power from the battery when the key is in the off position. If you were to tap into a circuit that has power even when the car is off, like the tail lamp fuse over here, the backup camera can be turned on even when the car is off. This means that if you get out of the car and forget to turn the backup camera switch off, it will keep draining the battery and eventually your battery will die. However, if you tap into an ignition switch circuit like the windshield wipers, even if you leave the car with the backup camera switch on, there will be no power supplied to the backup camera and your battery will be safe. To tap into the fuse box, you'll need a fuse tap. Remove the fuse from the circuit that you want to tap into, which in our case is this 25 amp fuse for the windshield wipers. Insert this fuse along with another fuse of the exact same current rating into the two slots on the fuse tap as shown. Now insert the fuse tap into the slot you just freed up. As you can see, the wire on the other end of the fuse tap has a butt connector on it. The wire that we're going to connect over here will carry 12 volts from the fuse box to the center console, where we can use it to power up the backup camera. This will be the power wire which we need to route into the center console. Guide the wire under the floor mat and into the center console area as shown. Make sure to keep the wire away from all pedals so they don't get caught. Pull the wire through into the center console and snip off any excess length. Going back to the circuit diagram I explained earlier, you'll see that we need to provide 12 volts to two different points, the blue wire on the switch and pin number 30 on the relay. To simplify connections, I'll be using a Wago connector. At the very least, you'll need one with 3 slots. Insert the 12 volts power cable into the first slot. The blue wire from the relay, which is pin number 30, goes into the second slot. And finally, the blue wire from the switch electrical connector goes into the third slot. Now both the relay and the switch have their 12 volts of power. If you remember earlier in the video, we made extensions for the red and the black wire coming from the camera connector and then routed them all the way to the center console area in the front. Now would be a good time to pull them into the center console as we'll be making the connections for them. It's very easy as you just have to route both of them behind this trim piece and into the center console area. One of the wires that we just pulled, which is the extension wire for the black cable coming from the camera connector in the back, needs to be connected to chassis ground. In addition, the wire coming from pin number 85 on the relay also needs to be grounded. This bolt over here is perfect as it screws into the chassis. We'll be using a ring terminal which will go around the bolt and therefore screw into the chassis. Crimp these two wires together into the ring terminal, the white wire from the relay which is pin number 85 and the black ground cable from the camera. Slide the ring terminal onto the bolt and then screw it down. Next, we need to make two connections using butt connectors. First, the black wire from the relay into the two wires we shorted together from the switch, the low and the high wires. And finally, the red wire from the relay to the extended power cable from the camera. In case you're confused as to why this wire from the camera is blue instead of red as the power wire should be, this is because when we were extending the wires at the back, I used a blue wire instead of a red one. Now the switch for the backup camera is fully wired up and we can test it out. As you can see, the switch controls the backup camera perfectly. To wrap up the installation, secure the extra cable using a zip tie and stow it away neatly. Remove the heated seat switch from its connector and then install it into the center console trim. Reconnect the connectors for both the side mirrors and the heated seat switch and install the center console trim by pushing down until it snaps into place. Do the same for both the plastic tray and the storage cubby. This completes the process and we've successfully installed a backup camera controlled by a switch. So that brings us to the end of today's video. If you liked it and would like to watch more of my automotive content, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.